All right, guys, it is 11:10. This is our second session of the national conference. The session is called Preparing the Workforce Post-COVID-19, presented by our CEO, Kent Kramer, here in Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana. Just some housekeeping as we get started with the presentation. I will be monitoring the participant list in the chat room, and so if you put your hand up and would like to ask a question, I will prompt Kent for you, and then you can ask your question along the way. So I'll do my best to try to find those authentic moments to stop, but we will try to get to you within the 50 minutes we have. So that's all I've got. I'll pass it over to Kent and go on mute.
All right. Thank you, Corey. Hopefully we will have some authentic moments with this 50-minute discussion / presentation. So I know we're going to have some folks continuing to pop in here. As Corey said, I'm Kent, and President and CEO of Goodwill of Central and Southern Indiana. Got about 18 and a half years with Goodwill and about 5.5 as the CEO here. All my years have been with this Goodwill. So it's great to have you all here. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen. All right. There we go. All right. So what we are going to, so Corey, it's back to the where I can't see anybody and everybody, so you'll have to interrupt if you don't mind.
Will do, sir.
When we hit one of those authentic moments. So if you want to stay off, keep yours. If mine goes sidetrack or the videos don't play, just let me know and we will figure that out.
Will do, sir.
But you know, as we put the call out for presenters and topics, one of the topics that I have, you know, I guess over the last year have been researching and, you know, having interest in is what, you know, how can we best prepare the people that we educate, employ, and serve? How can we best prepare them for the workforce of the future? So I've been doing quite a bit of research around that. And as the call out came out for the virtual presentations, thought it might be interesting to share some of that research, but also apply some of the learnings that we're finding today, kind of in the mid-COVID-19, as well as you know, kind of what we can do as Goodwill, as the Excel Center, as we attempt to help folks. So what we're going to go through today is a little of that research. Got about 5 slides of research, and you know, I violate every PowerPoint recommendation and have a lot on there, but on these slides. But you know, given the nature of the topic and I guess the interest level in the Excel Center and Goodwill's kind of interest in research and kind of knowing who we serve, thought this would be valuable information. Going to have a couple of videos in the middle, kind of talking about the workforce, what the workforce is facing today, and what work looks like, and how it's changing rapidly during COVID. And then also helping prepare. I've got four thoughts that we'd love to get your input on at the end. So I'll share the 4 thoughts, and then our desire is to have a few minutes just for open discussion to see if anything resonated or if you have different thoughts or ideas. said this to my team. It's, a lot of what we're doing today is we're kind of painting the plane while it's flying, trying to figure this thing out. So that's kind of how we'll end. So from a pre-COVID, and when I said the research perspective, we'll go way back. When I did this research 5 months ago, pre-COVID, was actually doing research for a workforce development presentation. And Chris Deckard, I saw you on here, so you sat through that with the state. So some of this is going to be repetitive, but it was more of a panel Q&A type thing. But as we go back, and a lot of this on the next 5 slides is going to be very pertinent today, and maybe even more pertinent to the people that we work with. 31.6 million adults without a high school diploma. That, unfortunately, is what's going to keep many Excel centers in business for many years, right? Ideally, we'd love to figure that out and not have to do that, move on to the next need. But this need's going to be there for years and decades to come, because there's still another 567,000 that drop out of U.S. high schools, 15 to 18-year-olds that continue to drop out. The number stays pretty constant between 30 and 32 million, but as of the last take, it was 31.6 million. Adults, there are a couple 100 million adults in the U.S., and so that's right around 15%. And looking at some of the market studies across the U.S. where Goodwills have looked at Excel centers, that's right in line, anywhere from 12 to 17%. So in Indiana, we're right around 15%. So that's, again, that number is still pretty constant right now. And we know what happens to those folks. 2/3 of adults without a high school diploma are low income. One of my I guess go-to statistics is a child of a high school dropout is 2 times more likely to drop out themselves. Cost of child poverty is $500 billion. Labor force participation rates for men is 58%. For women, it's only 33%, both below the labor force participation rates around 65%. So folks are not working, they're making less money, and you can see the median income. So again, why we do what we do at the Excel Center, this is it. We try and move people out of these buckets as we move along. Again, way back 5 months ago, what I would say are today's opportunities, but possibly could be yesterday's based on how we work our way out of COVID. But at the time, from an annual perspective, 11.5 million net new jobs were going to be created. And only 80,000 of those, this is across the country, on an annual basis, only 80,000 were going to be for people with high school diploma or less. So that's not even taking into account ones that got a diploma. At the time, a lot of unfilled jobs in the U.S. 73% of employers said they had difficult finding the right talent, and folks were saying universities were not preparing students for jobs. So that's what we were up against. We're still up against much of it now. Long-term outlook was not that great either for in basically any population, but 65% of Gen Zers just now in the last couple of years started graduating from college, and which is hard to believe. So that's, right now it's individuals aged 8 to 23. 65% of the jobs that they're going to hold don't even exist yet. So just a lot of automation, AI, and this is a scary statistic for me, is almost half of U.S. workers currently hold jobs that will likely be automated. And what COVID has done is maybe expanded on that. Way back 5 months ago, nearly 2/3 of all new jobs created since 2010 required either high or medium level digital skills. Many of you are seeing that. We're introducing throughout the network, you are digital skills into our curriculum, and it's so needed. And then also, this is one that may change. 60% of job growth could be concentrated into 25 cities, which is a pretty amazing number. That may change now. It may be one of the things that change where, rural and remote work, it may be possible to do that. So one of the videos I show is going to speak to that a little bit. But as I researched this, it was really around automation and AI, and just wondering who's going to get displaced as we look at that work, and who do we need to be prepared to start serving. And you can see here from a displacement rate, this was pre-COVID. I've got another one that projects it post-COVID, but a lot of office, food service production, customer service and sales, construction trades. That's where displacement is opportunity. So, this is one that, out of all the slides, where I hope that we have some change and that we figure this out as an organization, because sadly, as it says here, we've just got a legacy of racism, discrimination, oppression, and sadly, unfortunately, our Black, brown folks that we educate, employ, and serve do not have the same likelihood of finding success. And that's just something that our Goodwill is committed to doing whatever we can, and using our voice as we can to make sure the statistics on this slide go away, especially for the ones that we serve and we have the ability to make that change. And when you heard the Leo report today, when they first covered that with us about a year ago, it's one of the things I was pretty excited about, is that there wasn't a difference, that we were placing people into jobs, and we were seeing similar type incomes. And we just got to double down on that work. But I said this, way back 5 months ago. Obviously, this is an issue that we, as a society, have got to figure out. At the time, we had a growing economy. However, we still had 42.5 million in the U.S. living below the poverty line. Unemployment rate for people with disabilities, 2x. A lot of youth not working. 600,000 folks returning from the penal system annually. and just a significant number of working poor. So you've got this population, as you look at this, 42.5 below poverty line, 4.6 youth not working or entering, 600,000 where the unemployment rate is significant, and working poor. You've got these folks that could enter into some of these jobs that have where there are needs and openings. However, there's a skills gap and upskilling needed, reskilling and upskilling needed. You can see the statistics there. By 2035, 15 years from now, 50% of activities that people are currently paid for will be automated. And that's just amazing if you think about half of your job that you do now, and that's all jobs across the spectrum. Half of the activities is going to be automated. So again, just some very interesting data as we looked at it. Today, as we move forward, kind of in the COVID world, I know all of you have seen a chart like this, right? This is we had several years, 3.5 of unemployment rate right around the 3.5, 3.2, 3.5%. Many said that was full employment. And then COVID happened, and as you can see, that was May, 16%. However, June went down to 11.1%, so progress, but still lots of Americans out of work, and many of them in some of the categories that we spoke about earlier. COVID hit all spectrums, from job class as well as all races. As you look through this chart, this right here is kind of for myself, one of the most concerning charts that I found as I was looking, for thoughts around post-COVID and what we need to look at. So this is employment levels, right? This is the pre-COVID, early 20, 153 million. These are non-farm payrolls, but what this chart projects and what IHS Markit projects is that it could take up to 3 years for us to work our way out of this and get back to pre-COVID employment levels. So it's going to take some time. They also talked about the vulnerable jobs and the speed up of automation, the speed up of artificial intelligence, and what this is going to create, what's labeled as vulnerable jobs. So I'll let you look at this chart, but it's basically accommodation and food services, vulnerable jobs, anywhere from 10.5 million to 12.5 million jobs. Retail jobs, 8 to 10 million are at risk of going away. And what's not on here are other jobs, other opportunities that are going to be created through this space, but not always that retail cashier that may be losing his or her job is going to be able to transition without upskilling and training. So that is that.
Across the country.
I'm going to go ahead and kick off this next video. I got a couple of 3-minute videos here. I thought you all might find this interesting. The first one is, it talks about the shift that's happening with work. And imagine you've on the news, in your own office buildings, in your own, maybe your spouse or partner, your kids or parents are seeing some of these shifts that's happening with work, and it's happening very quickly. So we're going to watch this video. Corey, text me a thumbs up if make sure it's working.
Across the country, empty streets and empty office towers don't just mean a change in how we work. Entire communities have relocated to new places. A corporate headquarters can put tens of billions into local economies. In Charlotte, Bank of America has 180,000 employees working from home during the pandemic. Austin-based Dell expects more than half of their 160,000 staffers to never go back to their desks.
Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, Google and Facebook have announced that most of their workers will be at home for the rest of the year. But Twitter has announced that its workers will be at home from now on. And that's going to have an enormous impact, far beyond just empty desks in a building like this.
Nail salons, barbers, shoe repair, dog groomers, optometrists, bars. The list is long of those who depend on a workaday crowd. And they all stand to suffer if their customers don't commute in. Dan Miller's chain of dry cleaners has stores in walking distance of many tech companies.
We've seen declines nationwide of between 70 and 75% in the dry cleaning and laundry business. It's, I would say, one of the hardest hit industries other than probably airlines and hotels. But it's going to be a new world, right?
And for the folks who made a living selling to the lunch crowd, Twitter's announcement means the pain of the pandemic could be permanent.
Our sales are about 40% lower. Being able to service more of our community is going to be more of our focal point instead of just looking towards upstairs within our building.
Are there any upsides? Well, a post-pandemic office might give each person a lot more room. Matt Mullenweg's 1,200-person company has worked from home for years, and he says it's pretty great.
We don't realize how much time and agency we trade off in an office environment. At home, everyone has a corner office. You know, you're like the CEO of your own home.
So when this is all over, will we ever come back to an office again?
My prediction from having done a lot of research on this is, for those of us that can work from home, which is roughly 40% of people, I don't think many people are going to do that full time. I think the much more standard thing would be something like 2 or 3 days a week at home.
And that might change the places we wind up living.
And because you can come in and work in the office only 2 days a week, it's much easier for people to live, say, 2 hours out of the city because they're only commuting twice a week.
Mullenweg says he's already seen that happen.
Do they disperse when you give them the freedom to work from home? Have people scattered?
Typically within that first year, people will, look for a little more bang for their buck. If you're not having to commute every day, moving 20 or 30 minutes out, you can get some incredible space, more land, more air, better schools, like any number of things that might be a priority for you at the same or less cost.
Working from home now is a chance to stay safe while we wait for a vaccine. But city life may never be the same again.
All right. Go back. Okay, so I think that's funny. Talk about everybody has their own corner office. I am currently sitting in my daughter's bedroom doing my presentation here because I got kids home and everybody doing all kinds of stuff. So that's my corner office right now. The next one really, kind of speaks to preparing for tomorrow from a workforce perspective, not necessarily location, but it hopefully will kickstart our thought process about changing our mindset and what the future could hold for those that we educate and serve.
Just a few months ago, U.S. unemployment was as close to zero as it had been in half a century. Companies were desperate for workers. A 2019 report from the Society for Human Resource Management found that 83% of recruiters had had trouble finding good candidates in the prior year. That's not true any longer. Nearly 20 million Americans are still receiving unemployment benefits.
The majority of people that applied for unemployment now are under 40. Under 40.
What does that tell you?
Those who are the poorest among us, who live from paycheck to paycheck, they're the ones that are paying the price for this.
It's important to understand, many believe the road back to full employment in this country is filled with part-time jobs. The nation's largest platform for hiring hourly workers, Snagajob, estimates that of the 30 million Americans furloughed or laid off right now, only a third of them will be rehired by their employers in the near term.
And then the remaining 20 million, will either be looking for completely new employment in sectors like grocery and warehousing, or if they want to return to their employer, the way to sort of still stay engaged on both sides is to be able to at least pick up shifts in the interim on more of a part-time basis, or really on demand.
It's not clear that there will be enough jobs for everyone anytime soon. But the good news is that there are already jobs for people with new skills that can be acquired quickly.
Lots of companies need IT support professionals. There's just not enough of them. Well, it turns out getting into an IT support job doesn't require a college degree. It just requires training.
Coursera offers 4-year degrees in things like computer science, even an MBA. But if you need a job as soon as possible, there are shorter certificate programs.
The Google IT certificate is a big one. IBM has a data science certificate. These are all designed for people with no college degree and no background in the field.
Does it take a certain kind of person to have the self-discipline and the sort of get up and go, especially at as depressing a time as this, to make it through an online course and wind up qualified for a job?
So I think if it's a high quality course that's engaging, can lead to a job, and the learner is interested in finishing it, the completion rates can be much higher. But to your point, it does take effort.
So if you've been laid off, grieve, be angry, go ahead. But then try, if you can, to build your skills.
Don't just assume you're going to get called back. Don't just assume that you got 39 weeks of unemployment and you're getting as much or maybe a little bit more than you did before. Use it wisely.
Even in a good economy, it's been hard for people on the low end of the income and education spectrum to move into higher skilled and higher paying jobs.
If you put a 4-year degree requirement on a job, you are automatically screening out 76% of Black people. You are automatically screening out 83% of Latinx people. You're automatically screening out 82% of rural Americans. We have a choice. Do we want to have a more resilient and more equitable recovery going forward, or do we want to slip into these bad habits that we've had, for the last really 30 years or so in the labor market, that does not, provide opportunity even when we do have jobs coming back?
So, found that very interesting, and do believe that we're at a time where we can influence change, at least within our own organization. So preparing for tomorrow and post-COVID and what people are saying. Business travel is gonna change. We're currently at our Goodwill working with it's a $2 billion organization doing some contract manufacturing with them. And speaking with their CEO last week, and he was saying that they spend, believe it or not, right around $40 million a year on travel, just going to conferences. And they've got, but he says it's really making them because right now they're not spending any, and they're able to invest in other things. So they're really looking at that. So to get back to the level it was, it's probably going to be different. Office buildings could look different. I just found this quote where, people come in, once or twice a week, and it's more of a conference setting at their office building versus, it's where they hold large get-togethers and not necessarily do office stuff that would be done from home. So just, again, what people are saying, standard 9 to 5 hours could become a thing of the past because of the work from home. And there could be an opportunity that the workplace could become more equitable for women. Middle management positions could be cut. Automation could be accelerated. So a lot of good, and some will be tough for our populations that we serve. We talked about the digital divide. So now I've got 4 thoughts, and this is what I'll go through these quickly because I'd like to get input and any additional thoughts as we kind of prepare. So thought number 1 is obviously the work norms are shifting. You look at the significant increase that Gartner says, almost half of employees will be working remotely after the pandemic, up from 30%. I do know our own organization is seeing value, seeing productivity. We're seeing things that we miss from a community and collaboration standpoint, but we're also seeing, work get done. But, the thought around this is, how are we as an Excel Center, as a Goodwill, going to help people prepare, help people that we educate prepare for? We're hearing and seeing that, just interview process is different. People have to be able to navigate through Skype or through Zoom and be able to present themselves that way. They might be onboarding, and so technology, although it's something that has been important, it's going to be even more important as we help not only people find jobs, but once they get onboarded and then keep those jobs. And productivity, as you all know, a lot of our students, and I'm not just lumping all of them into one bucket here, but I do know, and speaking with many of you, that the autonomy, it takes a while for folks to really get used to that. And then even when we place people into jobs, sometimes if the job has quite a bit of autonomy, it just takes a different skill set. And are we preparing our people for that, from a work at home, work remotely? And then just, communication skills. And just found one that I thought was very interesting. And so I'll read through this. This is just HashiCorp CEO was talking about the difference between and he calls it chat literacy. So if you text somebody or send them an instant message, an IM, or even an email, and you just put okay, there's a difference between okay period, and then okay, dash, dash, dash. And, that's just one word, but the way you do that, don't know how much of that we teach our folks. Some we might all on this call say it's common sense, but we've all received texts, and it can be cryptic. We can emails. So this, as jobs move in transition, there's going to be other skill sets, including chat literacy, that folks are going to have to learn. So, preparing folks for that. Another one is talent is unconstrained. Location of talent is no longer geographically limited. You heard about those on the one news report where people are locating 20, 30 minutes out. I had another one, it was too long, based in New York. People are moving an hour out because they're now commuting in once or twice a week. So they don't mind living an hour and a half, 2 hours out, because if they do it once a week, they can, their quality of life is different the other 4 days plus the weekend. So finding talent, we may be going to the web to find talent, and you can hire somebody. It may not have to live close. So it opens up that and does change it radically. The options for acquiring lower cost talent are expanding. The coasts are seeing that and able to hire people. It's purely remote work, hiring it from areas that don't have the high cost of living where they live. So, and also just opens up for diverse talent. So that's thought number 2. Number 3 is, and this is one where I'm changing somewhat. I still see and believe in and promote the value of the one-on-one and in classroom instruction, and believe that's still a very core competency for the Excel Center. It's why we have some of the results that we do have. However, I also know things are changing. Don't know how long COVID will be around. I'm sure you all are like us. And as you look at the new school year, if you're allowed to open, you're doing it some remote, some in classroom, and you're spreading out folks. So this is going to have to change. Certifications, credentials. I guess the thought is, as we become better at this hybrid approach, we can become better as we prepare people for the future, because the jobs that they move into, they're going to need to be able to navigate the tools that we would utilize for class instruction as well as certifications. So that is that one. And then just my final thought here is don't know what it is, but as Goodwill, as the Excel Center, we've got to think big. There's so many unknowns out there. We don't know what type of government or other funding sources are going to be available. But I do think that we can be, as a movement, our individual Goodwills for our own communities can be at the forefront of what is developed, and we can play a very active and significant role in helping people prepare for post-COVID. You saw the data this morning that Patrick went over, and folks that aren't getting their high school diploma, at least in the state of Indiana, if they're not getting it through the Excel Center, they're not getting it. There's not a lot of options. So we've got 31 Excel Centers out there, primed and ready to make a difference for the workforce of tomorrow. So I'm going to, so I can see some faces, take that, I hope. There we go. And we've got about 10 minutes left. So really just anxious. Corey, is there any hands up questions or anything?
Yeah, I feel like as soon as I communicated to you, the chat was still not used. It exploded, so I'm happy to see that. The chat primarily started, I think, a conversation with Brian and Nicole about just the impact COVID's going to have on dropout rates. And so, Brian, do you want to say any more there, or Nicole?
Yeah, it's something that we've talked a little bit about. It's the dropout rate that we're having, that we're going to experience across the country as schools change their teaching model to be either remote or virtual or blended, and disenfranchise, disengage, lose that grip on those students who are at risk. And then as we see students, the same thing you just mentioned, Kent, how do we remain impactful and engaged and draw them in, because they've already seen those challenges, and the community that we're serving today is not readily engaged in a virtual environment.
Absolutely. I'm just jumping off on what Brian has said. We have found it to be really interesting here in Austin in that Excel centers are very much a community base for our student population. And so a lot of their daily life then shifts around coming to school. They get a lot of interpersonal things. They get a lot of support from life coaches, from teachers. That community is really big. And so moving into a hybrid or highly remote learning environment, that is kind of a fear base, like I have now lost something. And we didn't lose it, it just changed. And so that was something that we talked a lot about in teams around, make sure they know the school didn't go away. And we've even had to say that. The school is still here. We're here. We just don't look the same, and it doesn't center around a specific location. And so education is an in-person thing. It's what you do. You know, you get in that classroom, you have your fun things. And so helping our students understand that we're here, we just look different and we're connecting in a different way is a really tough transition. And comfortability around technology use is a big facet. I noticed that in the chat. And so helping them just understand a reframing around things has been kind of a central conversation for us.
Yeah, Nicole, you're right. It's, you know, availability of hardware, internet, Brian put on there. It is going to be something we saw that, you know, some of our kids on this call, the transition was seamless, right? But for some of the folks that we serve, you know, you get 3 or 4 people working on one computer, trying to do their classwork. It's just really, really difficult. And, you know, so that's preparing people for that. And even for work after that, you know, how do you do work? Not all employers will allow you to have your kid, you know, sitting on your lap while you're doing your work. You know, there might be some flexibility while you're going to school.
Yeah.
Some employers won't allow that. So, you know, teaching folks that. Any other thoughts around that, and maybe ideas on how to, as a movement, or as, you know, as a school system, how we can incorporate that into our learning?
Yeah, hey everybody. Okay. Jay from Noblesville. One of the things that strikes me very personally about this is the reaction that my son has had. He's 31 years old, has a college degree in computer programming, but he's also tends to have very high anxiety. And so this isolation and the lack of the ability to be around people, and even being fearful of being around people because of COVID, I'm sure that a lot of our students can relate to that. And so what concerns me is, how do we reach those people that are out there that are struggling and we may not even know about it? You know, and I think this probably is going to equally fall to coaches and teachers alike to try to, you know, this is about relationship building in a different way than we probably ever had to do before. So that's a big concern of mine, and I think it probably ultimately would relate to you know, things like dropout rates and retention and all that sort of stuff that we struggle with already. So, you know, I've seen my son really struggle through this COVID period. And like I said, I'm sure there's plenty of our students that can relate to that same experience.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Jay. It's you know, one thing I think that the Excel Center does well is help people through some of those barriers or obstacles, and this is just a new one. You know, pile it on, right? I mean, that's they've already got so much they're up against. Now it's more. So it's our challenge. So really appreciate you telling this story about your son, because I know our folks are not too dissimilar from some of the things that he's dealing with. Katrina, you had a question.
I do. So I love how your brain works and how creative you are. And so I think we could be presented with an interesting opportunity. You know, even among the staff of our organization now, they've had challenges trying to work from home. And that's people making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 plus a year. I think the folks we serve, I'm wondering if creating, you know, if we're going to have fewer of our own employees inside of our workspaces, could we offer those spaces up to people who need to work from home, but who don't have a home that's conducive to it or supportive of it, or that, you know, that they're not embarrassed to have as the background on their WebEx, that you can't put a fake background up like we have when we're, you know, hiding in someone's bedroom in our home. So I'm curious what you think about that, or what you think some of the solutions might be that Goodwill could help with.
You know, I love that idea, and I don't know if you were looking at all the squares, a lot of nodding, right? I mean, it's co-working space for the people we serve, and giving them a leg up, right? An opportunity possibly. Yeah, that's my initial thought is that's brilliant, but what do others think? Anybody?
I think that Kent, you're right, and I think that it offers an alternative that is definitely a step forward. You know, I look at what we have here in Arkansas and Little Rock. I think that it would be beneficial. What I really worry about is then as we move out into the smaller communities, what that offers them, and I think it's going to be very difficult. And you know, one of the class or the comments is offering a remote worker class, and how to be a remote worker, and how to live and thrive in the virtual world. I think that is critical. I think it's critical for our employees, but also for anyone who's seeking a job and upskilling and moving forward. I think it will be a vital skill. Yeah.
I love the idea of a class. You know, I don't know how that could be worked in from a curriculum, but, you know, part of a senior seminar type thing maybe, or maybe it is a full class if half the workforce is going to be working remotely. Karen, do you mind expanding on what you're speaking to there?
Good morning, everybody. It's just, it's very difficult under these times. It's, you know, these are very difficult circumstances for everybody, but I'm seeing with the students that I've run into just, you know, around town and every place, is that it's just definitely a lack of motivation. It's that lack of one-on-one contact, being in a classroom, being around people. I think we're all kind of tired of that to some degree. Even those of us that are introverts, it's very difficult not being in the normal routine of life. And I'm seeing that with students that are just, even on the phone, they're making comments about, you know, They want to know the answers. What will we do? Will we be in class or not? And we just don't have those answers. We're trying to say,
Right.
well, we're trying to, have an option here for both, depending on what everyone's, comfortable with. But it's that lack of one-on-one communication, classroom communication, and I think that is kind of wearing on everybody to the point that it's hard to be motivated when you don't have that regular routine and you don't see the end result in this circumstance. And I'm just seeing that a lot more lately. And, from our perspective as an MOA, I'm at Bloomington Excel Center, MOA, trying to keep that engagement there at a distance is, a very unique circumstance. We're trying to figure out how to do that and keep them engaged and keep them on track to follow through with what they've started. Because so many times in life, they've stopped what they're doing. They've stopped that education process, and that's why they're where they're at now. And it's up to us to find that way to keep them engaged and keep them to that end goal, even under these circumstances. And I guess trying to find out how to do that is a little bit, I'm not seeing the answer right now because we don't see the end result to all of this. We know this is temporary and it will come to an end. COVID will be in the past at some point in time and be history. But until that happens, we're still finding our way through this. And I think the students are reaching out, trying to have answers that none of us have, but they need a support that I just don't know if they're getting right now because we don't know, this is new for everybody. We don't know what to do or how to provide that from a distance especially. So I'm just seeing a lot of lack of motivation in the students because they don't see that end result. They can't even go to graduation. Graduation's on hold. So they're not even seeing that. So they're just not seeing an end result to any of this. And I think, unfortunately, we're losing more than what we're gaining possibly in this process because of these circumstances. And from my perspective, I don't know what to do or say that's going to ease that stress in any way because we just don't have those solid answers that they're looking for.
Yeah, you just summed that up very nicely, Karen, as far as what everybody's doing. This big exhale. It's like, yeah, she's right. This is what we're all dealing with. And the motivation, it goes back to the comments Brian and Nicole had at the beginning as far as their concerns that people are going to drop out, frustration because they don't know. So it just makes our job that much more important, and doing our best to as we've always done, latch on to the ones that do have a little bit of motivation. We can identify that and bring them along in a difficult time. So Corey, I think, are we at lunchtime now for the lunch? I don't want to have people late for the panel. Is that?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we've got a few minutes to break. I hope most of you have lunch close because I believe the student panel is going to start right at 12:10. So we had it listed different times in different places, so it'll be at 12:10 here in 8 minutes.
All right. Well, more comments coming on. Really appreciate some really solid ideas here. So thank you all for your participation, and I wish you well as we head into the school year. And thanks for being a part of the conference. And we'll see you in breakouts and maybe later on.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
Ken.
you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks.